Hi, my name is Natalie Jarvis, and my artist I chose was Magdalena Abakanowicz. In order to understand her, you really need to understand the background she comes from, and it's quite a unique background. Sadly, Magdalena passed away in 2017, so she personally can't tell her story anymore about her life experiences. But let's get into it. All right. So Magdalena was born in 1930. Couple of important things to know about her is, she was born in Poland, and her family was fairly well off up until the communist regime showed up. Um, but she was a descendant of Polish royalty, which will be important in just a minute. So when Magdalena was 9 years old, Germany invaded Poland and they began their occupation. So during this time period, she was under Nazi rule and it impacted a lot of her life. She saw and experienced some horrific things. Um, One of them being an experience she had in her mother, where she and her mother were both sitting in the kitchen, and she a drunk German soldier came in, knocked on the door, they let him in, and the German soldier proceeded to shoot Magdalena's mother in the arm. She recovered fully, thank heavens, but that arm had to come off. Um, so yeah, that's totally not a morbid thing for a child to see at all. It's a little scary. So one of the other interesting things about this communistic regime that was going on in her life is they really infiltrated the education system that was going on around her. When Hitler first came into power, there was a lot of celebration because a lot of people were struggling and stuff, and they standardized everything because communism. And the point they started changing child's education is when people started noticing there was something wrong. Um, Magdalena was one of those kids who experienced this education going down in Poland. Um, and one of the things that she absolutely despised was the mandatory art form was called socialistic realism. And as a result, that put a boundary on her art as she was learning and as she was growing to depict happiness and like smiling faces, bright colors, all these things. And from the things she had experienced, that was not accurate at all to her life experience. And she wanted to do something more. She wanted to do something else. So during World War II, she came of age in Poland, which is 14, which is fairly young compared to our day and age. And she was a nursing assistant. So you have a 14-year-old girl who's seen her mother's arm shot off. Her education has been highly controlled, and she did not like that. She's a very bold personality. If you'll see in a minute. Um, and she is serving in these nursing camps, and she is seeing all these soldiers get brought in, and she's helping out and seeing horrific things. Um, so eventually she goes on and gets college education, does really well, and she starts to establish herself as an artist. So one of the interesting things is she didn't always do sculpture, 3D art. She started like most every other artist did, where she would draw and she would paint, and she liked that. She liked that, but it wasn't quite her vibe. Um, But in the 1960s, so fast forward quite a bit of time, she made some amazing, amazing art pieces. In fact, she is one of the pioneers of the fiber art movement. A majority of her art pieces were made with fiber arts. Prior to later on in her life was when she was getting these commissions for these huge installations that we will be looking at later on. And one of the other fun facts to know about her is she was a professor as well. She taught art at the Academy of Fine Arts in Poznan, Poland, which is a super cool thing. Um, so these are some of the quotes from Magdalena, and I felt like these quotes gave such excellent insight into her personality. The first quote we have says, "Between myself and the material with which I create, no tool intervenes. I select it with my hands, I shape it with my hands transmit energy to it. In translating ideas into form, they always pass on it something that eludes conceptualization. They reveal the unconscious." Um, One of Magdalena's driving forces as an artist was she wanted to demonstrate humanity. Um, if you look at her art pieces, majority of them lack human detail. So you cannot tell if these structures are male or female. They're just depictions of people. And that's exactly how she wanted it. She wanted to be able to correctly portray people's emotions and their struggles. Um, this next quote from her was, "We are finally still questioning our existence, the problem of our existence, because this is the greatest question and the greatest mystery, existence and sense or nonsense, the extraordinary power of man and his extraordinary weakness." She saw so many power struggles, um, and this gave her a lot of motivation in her art pieces. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at some of those. So this is called Abakan Red. It is named after her family name, which is Abakan. Um, so, as I mentioned previously, Magdalena is descended from royalty, and her entire life she had to hide her identity and this fact because it would have put her family in danger and they would have been killed due to this fact. So, she has an Abakan series. This one happens to be Abakan Red that she has done that has allowed her to demonstrate her family name. This particular piece is made out of woven fiber. It's one of the ones that really made fiber arts popular during this movement. And it was soft to the touch. And it's just held up by strings and stuff, and it just lays there, and it's really awesome. So this next one is called the Four-Seated Figures. This particular piece, she took what she saw with politics and her life experiences, and she made them into art. This particular piece is not made out of metal, even though it kind of looks like it at the first glance, except for what these statues are sitting on, but they're made out of burlap sack and resin, which I find exceedingly interesting because during World War II there were clothing pieces made out of burlap sacks and stuff, and so I'm willing to bet that this was a choice that she made, and you can really see the grief and the anguish that is set up in these forms that reflect hardships in the modern world. So this piece is Angora, and this cracks me up because this little old lady at this point was commissioned by Chicago, Illinois, and she made 106 of these guys, and they're 9-foot statues. She made them in Poland and then shipped them to Chicago. Like, that's awesome. And they're made out of cast iron, and the Greek word for meeting house is what gave Angora its name. So yeah, and this piece is very strategically arranged. Some of them are grouped together and some of them are moving farther apart. But overall, this woman had such a lovely grasp on this world and was able to she was able to depict humanity, which I think was a very awesome goal that she had in her life. And I think she really hit that on the head.